Mayor Adams stated the city's compassion may be limitless, but our resources are not.
Advocates are vowing to vigorously fight any rollback of the city's right to shelter law. Exactly what the city's responsibilities is for asylum seekers will be determined at that court hearing today. And joining us now is Joshua Goldfein. He's a staff attorney for the Legal Aid Society, one of the plaintiffs who will appear before Judge Edwards this afternoon. First off, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Now, most people in our audience probably are not familiar with the city's right to shelter responsibility. Can you explain what the city's required to do for the homeless?
Yeah, the New York State Constitution includes a provision that was added after the Depression, when we had lots of people living on the streets in Hoovervilles and unhoused. And at that time, the lawmakers felt that the state had an obligation to protect people, to keep them safe, to make sure that if nothing else, you should have a safe place to go inside. So they added that provision to the Constitution. In 1979, a lawyer brought a case saying that the city was not living up to that obligation because there were a lot of people living on the streets. And the city agreed at that time in a consent decree that the city has an obligation to provide shelter to everybody who needs it.
So, Joshua, is it correct to say the original intent of right to shelter was intended for homeless New Yorkers, not asylum seekers from around the world?
No, I think that what we saw, again, after the Depression was that there were lots of people who were living on the streets who had nowhere to go. They could have come from anywhere. I think what the purpose was to preserve for all of us the idea that, people have a right to some dignity, that it doesn't help anyone when there are lots of people sleeping in the streets, that we all benefit from knowing that people are safe and that they are inside at night.
Now, you've been quoted as saying that the state has not met its obligations, but the right to shelter decree was written for New York City. Do you think the judge should expand the right to shelter law statewide?
We're very hopeful that the parties will be able to come up with a plan to address the situation. I think we had, lawmakers maybe not taking this seriously at the state level, but we have made a lot of progress in recent weeks. And I think, we're very hopeful that we'll be able to come up with a plan that will ensure that everybody's needs are met, that the problem is shared, that the appropriate level of government will take on the responsibility of making sure that people get to where they need to get.
And so, speaking of the state and sharing responsibility, should Governor Hochul issue an executive order to prevent localities from banning asylum seekers in their own towns?
This is a statewide issue, and I think that the governor could really take control of the problem that she identified, which is that the city is reaching out wherever it can to find space. And that's not really a organized, directed plan that addresses the issue on a statewide basis. We would all be better off if, the governor would take control of the situation, would ensure that people could go where they need to go, but then she could coordinate exactly where people went. We have communities upstate that are in need of labor. They have need of seasonal labor and also longer term work. They have declining school enrollments. We've seen communities all around the state be revitalized by resettlement efforts in the past, and there's no reason that couldn't continue. We could strengthen our communities if we had a statewide analysis of where are the best places for people to go, rather than just relying on what space can the city find in an emergency basis.
And Joshua, what do you expect will happen in court this afternoon?
I think that we'll meet with the judge. We'll tell her about the progress that we're making, and I expect that she'll be pleased to hear that and encourage us to keep working on it.
Joshua Goldfein, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Stay with CBS News New York for continuous coverage of the court hearing this afternoon.